Oliver Grant hated weddings. He hated the fake smiles, the relentless photos, the heat, the sand, the noise. But above all, he hated sharing dots so naturally. He ended up sharing a luxury suite with the loudest, most chaotic woman he'd ever met. Azure Sands Resort looked like a five-star honeymoon fantasy swaying palms, cascading pools, staff trained to carry both luggage and secrets. Oliver stepped out of the black town car in a crisp navy suit and black sunglasses, every movement controlled, every line on his body sharply pressed and deliberate. He wasn't here for the island sunsets or the ridiculous coconut drinks. He was here to be the best man at Noah's wedding, his oldest friend, practically a brother. If that meant tolerating a weekend full of rehearsals, speeches, and group brunches, then fine. What it did not include, however, was this. There's been a small hiccup with the room assignments, the receptionist said, tapping nervously. On the keyboard, Oliver narrowed his eyes. Define hiccup. The woman gave a strained smile. Your suite was double booked by the bridal party. You'll be sharing with Miss Harper Rhodes. The name hit like a splash of cold water. He remembered her vaguely from the engagement party. Wild hair, bold colors, that laugh that had somehow taken over the room like it was music. She'd worn a lime green dress and heels that looked engineered. For danger, I'll need a different room, he said flatly. I'm afraid we're at full capacity for the weekend. He let out a breath, slow and tight. Key card, please. She handed it to him with a slightly terrified smile. Oliver stepped into the elevator, his jaw set as the doors closed. He didn't like unexpected changes. He didn't like sharing space, and he definitely didn't like Harper Rhodes Suite 708. He swiped the card. The door opened. There she was, in a silk robe, with a clay mask spread across her cheeks, and her curls piled high on her head like a crown. Her suitcase lay open like a crime scene of colors, fabrics, and accessories. A candle burned on the dresser. The room smelled like vanilla and something citrusy. Harper glanced up from her phone and grinned. Oh, great. You're the mystery. Roommate, Oliver blinked. You knew? She stretched her arms overhead and said, Emily warned me. Said you'd be grumpy about it. You're kind of proving her right, by the way. He dropped his bag onto the luggage rack with controlled force. I'm not grumpy. I'm structured. Sure, she said, smirking. Let's go with that. He surveyed the room. One bed, king-sized. Of course. I'll call for a cot, he muttered, shrugging out of his blazer. No need, she said brightly. Already claimed the couch. My back's used to weird sleeping setups. Plus, I snore. He paused, halfway through unbuttoning his cuff. You're joking. She winked. Only slightly. Retreating to the bathroom, Oliver ran cold water over his face, wondering how the hell this was his life. When he stepped back into the room, the candle was still burning, and she was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone and laughing. Softly to herself. What exactly do you do again? He asked, trying not to sound too curious. She looked up. I'm a body-positive fashion influencer. I also speak at wellness conferences, TEDx, Spotify panel stuff. Little bit of modeling. Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, of course. He crossed his arms. That's surprisingly entrepreneurial. Harper grinned. Was that a compliment? It was a surprise, he said. She gave him a look. Same thing in your world? He allowed a half smile. Touché. Later. That evening, after the rehearsal cocktails and obligatory introductions, Oliver returned to the suite, bone-tired and socially drained. Harper was already there, lounging on the bed in an oversized t-shirt, flipping through a bridal magazine. He stopped at the doorway. You're seriously taking the couch? I thought you claimed it, she said. I changed my mind. 2. Many people. Too many conversations. My back's not what it used to be. We're not both sleeping on the bed, he said firmly. She raised an eyebrow. Why not? It's a giant bed. We're both clothed adults. I don't bite. Unless someone tries to mansplain spreadsheets. It's not appropriate, he said. She rolled her eyes. Relax. You act like we're in a Victorian novel. Eventually, they settled on opposite sides of the bed, a pillow wall constructed. Between them, like a neutral zone, the room darkened. The ceiling fan spun lazily. Silence stretched. 10 minutes passed. Then Harper whispered, Do you always breathe that loudly when you sleep? I'm not asleep. Oh, good. Thought I was lying next to Darth Vader. He couldn't help it. He laughed, a small surprise. Sound that slipped past his usual control. She smiled into the darkness. See? Not as cold as you act. He turned slightly, catching a glimpse of her in the moonlight. She looked soft, unapologetic, like she belonged to the world in a way. He never had. I'm not cold, he said after a pause. I'm careful. That sounds lonely. He didn't respond. No one had ever called him lonely before. She rolled over with a yawn. Good night, Mr. Best Man. Good night, Miss Maid of Honor. Oliver stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to her breathing slow and subtle. The scent of her candle lingered in the air. He was wide awake. And not because of insomnia. Because of her. Morning came wrapped in sunlight and the soft hum of island breeze through the curtains. Oliver awoke to the scent of vanilla still lingering in the air and a body missing beside him. The bed was empty. The pillow wall remained. For a moment, he thought it had all been a strange, sensory dream until he heard music coming from the balcony. A soft indie pop tune drifted in. He got up, ran a hand through his hair, and followed the sound. There she was, Harper, in a yellow sundress, hair twisted into a high puff, swaying barefoot as she brushed her teeth with one hand and danced with a mimosa in the other. She looked like sunshine. Loud, glowing, absolutely unfiltered. She noticed him and waved dramatically. Welcome to brunch hour, she called. You're late? The bride says if you're not there in 15, she's sending the flower girls to hunt you down. Oliver blinked at her. Is that supposed to be a threat? Harper smirked. Depends on how you feel about being tackled by tiny humans in Tool. 15 minutes later, he stood stiffly by the beachside restaurant's breakfast buffet, staring at a suspiciously colorful fruit parfait. There were pineapples, mango slices shaped like stars. Someone had added edible flowers. This wasn't food. This was a Pinterest board. He ignored it all and grabbed a coffee. Black, strong. Then he spotted her. Harper sat at a corner table with a group of bridesmaids, laughing with a mimosa in one hand and sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown. The same yellow sundress clung to her like it had been designed just for her body. She saw him immediately and shouted across the patio. There he is, fresh from the dungeon. A few heads turned. A few chuckled. Oliver considered pretending not to hear and sighed and made his way over. Harper pulled out the chair beside her, patting it like a game show prize. Relax, Wall Street. It's just brunch. He sat, careful to keep a distance. Between their arms, someone just offered me a guava pancake. I don't know what that is. Sounds like breakfast joy. Sounds like sabotage. She grinned. You're such a tragic little man. He sipped his coffee. And you're loud before 10 a.m. It's alarming. Around them, bridesmaids chuckled. Someone whispered something about enemies to lovers. Energy, which Harper pretended not to hear, though her smirk said otherwise. He was still deciding whether to stay or escape when she leaned toward him and said, Do you ever tone it down? He raised a brow. Do you? She tilted her head. Touché. After brunch, Oliver attempted to flee toward the lobby until she jogged up beside him, sandals in hand, her curls bouncing with each step. "You survived," she said. "Barely. 3 cups of coffee and mentally leaving my body helped." She laughed. "Do you ever relax?" He kept walking. "This is me relaxing. You're walking like you're late to a board meeting." Oliver glanced down. His arms were crossed. His jaw was tight. He forced them to relax. Slightly she looked at him, amused. "You're like one of those puzzles no one solves." "I'm not a puzzle. I'm guarded? I prefer the term selective." "That's adorable." They walked a few steps in silence, the sound of the ocean brushing against the wind. Then Harper said, casually, "I Googled you last night." He wasn't surprised, and she shrugged. Standard billionaire stuff. Finance, tech, private equity. Articles with dramatic headlines, like "The Man Who Made Markets Bend." "You look very intense in grayscale." "Accuracy matters," she laughed. "Also punctual. So punctual it's practically a brand." He gave her a sidelong glance. "You researched my punctuality? I do my homework." Back in the suite, Harper collapsed on the couch with a groan. That mimosa hit hard. Oliver removed his blazer, loosening his tie. "Some of us have calls to make." She turned her head slowly toward him. "You're working?" He nodded. "Business doesn't pause for weddings." She narrowed her eyes. "Do you ever stop?" He looked at his phone. "I'm relaxing now." "You're frowning at your phone and standing like you're waiting for a fire drill." Oliver blinked. Then, without saying anything, he sat on the edge of the bed and put the phone down. She grinned. Progress. That afternoon, a beach volleyball game was announced mandatory fun, according to Noah. Oliver tried to disappear until Noah physically dragged him out of the suite by the collar, declaring it a bonding exercise. He hated bonding. Harper, of course, was already there, hyping her team up like a coach before a championship. She wore high-waisted shorts and a sports bra, stretching dramatically and calling his name across the court. "You better not suck." "I haven't played since college," Oliver muttered as he joined her team. "Perfect. You're the wild card." 2 minutes in, she spiked the ball straight at him. He barely dodged. "You're trying to murder me," he said, gasping for air. "Nope. Just trying to wake you up. Mission accomplished." "I'm fully conscious and possibly concussed." She tossed him a water bottle. "You're not so bad when you stop being ... You." Oliver sat beside her in the sand, breathing. Hard, sweat dripping down his temples. He looked at her. "What do you think I am?" Harper tilted her head. "A guy who controls everything. The temperature of a room. The energy in a conversation. Yourself. But ... you're more than that. You don't even know me." "Not yet." Their eyes locked. The air between them stretched warm, buzzing, unspoken. Then someone called their names, and the moment broke like a wave. That evening, the rehearsal dinner took place under a canopy of lanterns and fairy lights in the garden courtyard. Laughter mingled with music. Wine flowed. Toasts were made. Oliver hovered near the edge, hands in pockets. Watching Harper found him quickly. "Why are you always lurking in corners like a moody vampire?" "I enjoy the silence." "You need therapy." "Probably." She stepped closer. "Dance with me." "I don't dance." "Liar." "I don't dance well." "Don't care?" She took his hand. He didn't resist. The music was slow and smoky. Her fingers fit easily in his. Her body moved like she belonged to rhythm. His didn't, but she adjusted. Her arm wrapped lightly around his shoulder. His hand slipped to her waist, tentatively. Then she murmured, "You're staring." "I'm trying to figure you out. Good luck." You like challenging me. She smiled, close enough for him to feel her breath. I like making you feel something. He didn't respond right away. Then she whispered, "Do you?" He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, someone bumped into them, spilling champagne across his back. She gasped. The moment shattered. "I'm going to get some air," she said softly. He watched her disappear into the crowd, heart pounding. And, just like that, the careful control of his world tilted slightly off axis. The crowd didn't notice not the spilled champagne, not the almost kiss that hadn't happened, but Oliver noticed. His shirt clung to his back, and the hum of conversation sounded farther away than it actually was. Harper was gone. He scanned the garden lanterns casting soft light, couples dancing under the canopy, laughter swirling like wind, but she wasn't there. For the first time all weekend, he wanted someone in the room, and she wasn't in it. Later, after the guests had started to fade into their wine, and the staff had begun clearing plates, Oliver found her. She stood on the balcony outside, the suite, arms wrapped around herself, hair a little windblown. She didn't turn when she heard him approach, but he knew she knew he was there. "I didn't mean to ruin the moment," she said quietly. "You didn't." He joined her, standing beside her in the glow of the moonlight. The waves crashed. Faintly below, the scent of her vanilla candle still lingered on her skin. "You're the kind of man who controls the temperature of a room," she said. "But people like me, we light fires." He looked at her then. "You think I'm cold? I think you pretend to be, but you're not." "Not really." She turned to face him. Her eyes were clear, steady. Not playful for once, so why are? "You so scared?" she asked. He hesitated, then answered, "Because I built a world where feelings don't fit. Vulnerability is messy, unreliable, dangerous. Then why am I here?" He met her gaze. "I have no idea, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you walked into that suite." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his. He turned toward her fully, and for one sharp electric second, neither of them moved. Then he kissed her. It wasn't polite. It wasn't slow. It was two opposites colliding, heat meeting ice. Control, unraveling into instinct. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Harper gave him a look of surprised softness. "Well," she murmured, "that's one way to end the night." A loud knock interrupted them. They both froze. Another knock echoed. Through the suite, Harper chuckled and said, "You've been saved by the bell, Mr. Grant." She pulled back slowly as he went to answer the door. Standing there with a glass of whiskey and a lopsided grin was Noah. His tie was undone, his eyes a little too bright. "There you are," he said. "You missed the poker game." "I didn't realize it was mandatory." "It is. Best man tradition." His gaze shifted and landed on Harper, who was now leaning in the doorway with an amused smile. Noah grinned. "Well, well. The roommate arrangements going great, huh?" Harper laughed. "You have no idea." Noah clapped Oliver on the back, sloshing a bit of his drink. 10 minutes. If you're not there, I'm sending the entire groomsmen squad after you." He wandered down the hallway, singing off -T. Oliver closed the door, then leaned against it with a quiet exhale. Harper smiled. "Apparently, we've been given 10 minutes. He walked back to her slowly, the moment still alive in the air between them. "What happened on the balcony? He began. She interrupted softly. "It was real," he nodded. "I wasn't going to pretend otherwise." She stepped closer. "You live in New York. I live in New Orleans. Different cities, different planets. I know. I run a nonprofit for teen girls and post body-positive content from a thrifted couch. I own half a skyscraper and schedule feelings like board meetings." "And yet," she said, brushing her fingers over his hand. "We've shared a bed for 2 nights and somehow not killed each other." He smiled. "You've been too busy mocking my wardrobe." She grinned. "You've been too busy judging my playlist." His expression softened. "I haven't let anyone in for a long time." Harper's voice dropped. "And I've been burned. Guys who wanted the body, not the brain, told me I was too loud, too much, too curvy, too everything." His jaw tightened. "They were idiots." She looked up at him. "Maybe, but they left cracks." He took her hand. "Then let's fall, one step at a time." She held his gaze. "You really are a romantic under all that Armani." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed from the nightstand. She sighed and picked it up. "It's Emily. Vow emergency." Oliver checked his watch. "And I've got poker duty in 5. She kissed his cheek. "To be continued?" "Definitely." It was nearly 2 a.m. when he returned to the suite. A poker game had ended with one guy jumping fully clothed into the pool and Noah serenading the bartender with something that might have been an Ed Sheeran song. Oliver opened the suite door. Quietly, Harper was asleep on the couch. A book had slipped from her chest. Her curls framed her face, and her arm dangled off the side. A soft crease furrowed her brow even in sleep. He stood there for a long time, just looking at her. Then he walked over, lifted the book gently, and placed a blanket over her. "Good night, puzzle," he whispered. The next morning, the resort buzzed with pre-wedding energy. White roses lined the path to the ceremony. A harpist rehearsed beneath a floral arch. Guests sipped champagne by the water. Oliver stood near the altar, adjusting his cufflinks with subtle nervous energy. He glanced toward the back. There she was, Harper, no longer in sundresses or T-shirts, but in a lavender silk gown that hugged her perfectly. She wasn't part of the wedding party now, but she walked behind the bride, helping guide the train, steadying 2 tiny flower girls. She was glowing. Calm, radiant, unapologetic. Their eyes met. She winked, and he forgot how to breathe. For a second, Noah leaned over and whispered, "You're totally into her." Oliver didn't deny it. The ceremony unfolded in soft breezes and stolen glances. The reception bloomed into golden light and music. Speeches were made. Glasses CLINKED. At the open bar. Harper approached. "You clean up well," she said. "Always look like this," he replied, deadpan. She grinned. "Exactly my point." He leaned in. "Dance with me. For real this time." "In front of everyone?" "I don't care who sees." And just like that, the story began again. But this time, it wasn't about accidents. It was about choice. The music slowed as he took her hand. Harper hesitated for half a second, like she was still deciding whether to play along or push him away. But then she stepped into him. Her palm slid into his. Her other hand settled lightly on his shoulder. Oliver rested his hand at her waist, unsure at first, like someone trying to learn a language mid-conversation. She fit against him like she'd done this before. Not just the dance, but this rhythm between them. They moved cautiously at first. He was stiff, she was fluid. But then something shifted. They found each other. People watched, whispered, but neither of them cared. The fairy lights above them blinked like a constellation made just for the moment. Harper tilted her head up slightly and murmured, "You're staring again." Oliver's voice was low. "I'm still trying to figure you out. You won't." "Why?" "Not? Because I'm not a spreadsheet. I'm a sparkler in a thunderstorm." He smirked. "That sounds exhausting." "You say that," she said, "but you haven't let go yet." They kept moving, swaying. Her dress shimmered with each step, and her perfume, warm vanilla and something floral, curled around him like a question. He didn't know how to answer. Then she asked, softly, "Do you always look at people like you're trying to predict their damage?" He blinked. Excuse me? She pulled back just slightly to look at him. You analyze people. Strategically. Like they're either a risk or an investment. He didn't deny it. She held his gaze. So what am I? Oliver didn't speak right away. Then he said, You're not either. You're unpredictable. Harper laughed, breathless, and shook her head. Careful. You're starting to sound like a poet. Terrifying thought. Even more terrifying? She whispered, I think I like it. He was about to respond, maybe even tell her the truth, that she scared the hell out of him in the most thrilling way, when a voice shouted over the music. Sorry to interrupt the lovebirds, Noah called from the mic. But I have an announcement. Harper and Oliver paused, still holding on to each other. Apparently, Noah continued, swaying slightly from too much champagne, there's been a plumbing issue with the bridal suite. So, room changes are happening tonight. Groans erupted from the crowd. Noah grinned. Don't worry, we're taking care of it. But Harper, you've been reassigned to a new room. And Oliver, he smirked, you're stuck with the groomsmen crew for now. The mic clicked off. Music resumed. Guests laughed and clapped. Harper raised an eyebrow. So, the suite situation is officially over. Oliver didn't answer at first. Then he said, Unless it doesn't have to be. She tilted her head. You offering to kick out your friends? No. He stepped a little closer. I'm asking you to come to New York. For a weekend. A week. A month. Whatever you want. Her eyes widened just slightly. Are you serious? As serious as a hostile takeover. Harper blinked at him, speechless for the first time since they'd met. I can't just drop everything. Then I'll come to you. She stared at him. New Orleans. Your rules. Your city. I'll even eat bayonets and dance in the street if that's what it takes. She crossed her arms. You would hate that. He smiled. Not if you're there. There was a pause. Then she said, Fine, but one condition. Anything. No more emotional armor. You leave the Wall Street mask at the airport. He nodded. Deal, but only if you stop calling me Wall Street. She grinned. Absolutely not. They laughed, standing under the lights while the wedding carried on around them. Two people who hadn't meant to meet, hadn't meant to fall, and certainly hadn't meant to plan anything beyond a few chaotic nights. But here they were planning. Week later, the terminal at JFK buzzed with impatient travelers, and the smell of overpriced LATT East. Oliver stood just past security, holding 2 coffees and scanning the crowd. Then he saw her. Harper walked toward him with oversized sunglasses, a tote bag slung over one shoulder, and a hoodie tied around her waist like a teenage rebel. She waved the moment their eyes met. He handed her the coffee. Welcome to Manhattan, he said. She took a sip and arched an eyebrow. You didn't make this? Nope. I hired a barista to memorize your order, she laughed. Of course. You did? The city unfolded around them like a storybook rewritten in her voice. She danced on the sidewalk, took selfies in Central Park, and made him try street vendor falafel that he hated, and then pretended to love. They went to museums, rooftops, jazz bars. She made him take a photo in Times Square, wearing sunglasses. At night, he didn't know he could laugh like that. He didn't know he could. Want someone in the quiet ways, not just attraction, but comfort, curiosity, peace. At night, they lay tangled in blankets on his penthouse couch, watching old movies while she braided his tie into knots for fun. She didn't fit into his world. She changed it. By the end of the visit, she didn't want to leave. By the end of the month, he didn't let her. They started flying back and forth, weekends in the French Quarter, weekdays in Midtown. Sometimes she sent him postcards from her favorite thrift shops. Sometimes he sent her voice notes of business meetings she'd find absurd. 6 months later, on a rainy morning in Manhattan, Harper stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in Oliver's apartment, coffee in hand, wearing his hoodie. The city buzzed below. He walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed her neck. "You're up early," she said. "I wanted to watch the sunrise with you." Cheesy, she teased. "I have something to tell you." She turned, curious. "You're not pregnant, are you?" She laughed. "What?" "No. But nice to know that's where your brain went." He smiled. "Okay. What then?" She pulled a small silver key from her pocket and held it up. "I signed the lease. I'm keeping my place in New Orleans, but I'm also moving here, part-time." Oliver stared at her for a second. Then he took the key gently, kissed it, and pressed it back into her palm. "You're the best unexpected roommate I've ever had." "And you," she said, pulling him closer, "are the most annoyingly perfect billionaire I've ever fallen for." They kissed, slow and deep, as the city came to life around them. Sometimes, love doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it barges in with too many suitcases, claims your side of the bed, and dares you to feel again. And sometimes ... that single quotes S exactly what you need. 3 months. That's how long it had been since Harper Rhodes first set foot in Manhattan, with a carry-on full of sundresses and zero expectations. No, her toothbrush lived next to Oliver's. Her playlists hijacked the sound system. Her lemon-scented candles lingered in the hallway long after she left, but so did the silence when she was gone. She stood in the middle of Oliver's penthouse living room, suitcase by her side, hoodie zipped to her chin. The car that would take her to the airport waited downstairs, and so did the life she hadn't chosen to leave, not fully. Oliver leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Not cold, not warm, just calculating. The kind of look he wore when he was trying not to feel too much. "You're not saying anything," Harper said. "I'm thinking." She narrowed her eyes. "You're overthinking." He pushed off this counter. "You're flying out, and you still haven't said when you're coming back." "Because I don't know," she admitted. That stopped him. "I have a conference next week, a charity gala after that. I'm launching a new workshop program in the city. I need to be present for it." "I know," he said. "But the edge in." His voice betrayed him. Her chest tightened. "Is this about me going home? Or you not being able to schedule me like one of your meetings? That's not fair, isn't it?" The room fell quiet. Then, softly, Oliver said, "I just didn't expect it to feel this empty when you leave." That hit her harder than anything else. Harper stepped forward. "You built your whole life to run without interruptions. I'm not trying to ruin that, but I can't erase myself either." "I'm not asking you to." She looked at him. "Aren't you, though? In small ways?" His jaw tensed. "You hate how I travel with 5 pairs of shoes. You flinch every time I touch your vinyl collection. You roll your eyes at my playlists." "I don't roll my eyes." "You definitely roll your eyes." He sighed. "I like order." "I am the opposite of order," she said. And maybe that was exciting for a while. But eventually, chaos gets tiring, right? Oliver didn't respond, and that silence said everything. Harper stepped back, nodding to herself. "Maybe you don't have to say it." Then she picked up her suitcase. The next few weeks stretched like elastic, always pulling, never snapping, never settling. Phone calls got shorter. Voice notes turned into text messages. FaceTimes became postponed. She missed New York, missed him, but also missed feeling certain. He missed her too, but didn't know how to say it without sounding like he was trying to control something again. Back in New Orleans, Harper poured herself into work, her nonprofit, Old Girls Collective. had been running a campaign for underserved schools, and the weight of responsibility grounded her like gravity. But some nights, she lay awake wondering if she had walked away too soon, or if she'd been smart to leave before it all fell apart. And then one Friday afternoon, he showed up. She had just wrapped a mentoring session when she stepped into the front office and saw him standing there, tie loosened, holding 2 iced coffees and looking painfully out of place in a room full of motivational posters. She froze. "I figured I owed you a beignet," Oliver said quietly. She stared at him. "You flew here," he nodded. "Wasn't in the calendar." She blinked. "Why?" He handed her a coffee. "Because I don't want this to be something we only know how to do when it's convenient." Harper took the cup slowly, her fingers brushing his. "You can't just show up here and fix everything with caffeine and charm." "I know." "You hurt me," she said. He nodded again. "And you terrified me." Her eyebrows lifted. "I don't mean that as a dig. You made me feel things I buried under precision and productivity. I spent years building walls so nothing could hurt me. You blew through them with glitter and playlists and laughing too loud in quiet rooms." She swallowed. "I don't know if that's a compliment or a warning." "It's both," he said. "You didn't ruin my life, Harper. You reminded me I had one." They spent the weekend in New Orleans. They danced on her block when a brass band passed by. He wore a linen shirt that he hated. She made him try gumbo so spicy his ears turned red. And on the final night, Harper stood in her kitchen with flour on her cheek and asked the question that had been quietly rising for weeks. "What are we doing?" Oliver looked at her like it wasn't complicated. "We're figuring it out. And if we can't, then we keep trying. Until we do." "You sure?" "I'm not sure of a lot," he said. "But I'm sure I want you. Even if it means learning to be uncomfortable. Even if it means not having control." Her eyes shimmered. "You're really bad at this." "I know," she smiled through a tear. "But I love that you're trying." Back in New York 2 weeks later, she unpacked her suitcase and found a note tucked into her bag. His handwriting was messy. Still precise. "But messy. This isn't temporary. I don't want space. I want you in it. It was never the big things that shook Harper. Not the flight delays. Not the public speaking gigs. Not even the idea of leaving cities behind. It was the little things, like the fact that Oliver didn't drink coffee in the morning when she wasn't there. Or how her favorite hoodie disappeared from his closet the week she stayed away too long. Or how she felt her heart pause every time his name lit up. Her phone. And now they were 3 days away from her speaking at a national summit for youth empowerment in L.A., a major milestone in her career. And she hadn't heard from him in 2. It wasn't like him. Oliver didn't ghost. He scheduled his silences like business trips. So when her phone finally buzzed with his name, she picked it up before the second ring. His voice was calm. A little too calm. "Hey." She smiled despite the storm in her chest. "Hey, stranger." "Hey." Pause. "I'm going to have to miss the summit." Her breath caught. "I know it's important," he added quickly. I can't leave New York right now. There's a deal on the line, and if it collapses, so does 3 years of work." She said nothing at first, just stared out the window of her hotel room in L.A., the city buzzing like it didn't care about feelings. "Okay," she said. He heard something in that word. Something not okay at all. "Harper, you don't have to explain," she interrupted. "I get it. Business comes first. Always has." "That's not what I meant. You're not a bad guy, Oliver," she said, her voice even. "You're just a guy who wants a life I don't fit neatly into. That doesn't make you wrong. It just makes us—" She trailed off. He finished. "It for her. Different." Another pause. A longer one. Finally, she said, "Good luck with the deal," and hung up. The summit was a blur. She gave her speech. She shook hands. She smiled for pictures and talked about strength and self-worth and not shrinking for anyone. But as soon as the lights dimmed and the stage emptied, she sat on the edge of the green room couch and cried, not because he missed it, but because part of her always knew he would. Back in New York, Oliver stood in the middle of his conference room, staring at a contract that could have made him another $100 million. He closed the folder. "I'm walking," he said to his team. They stared at him. "What?" "I'm walking away from this deal." His CFO's voice broke the silence. "Oliver, this is everything you've worked for. The firm will survive. Or it won't. Either way, I'm done trading time for more zeros." 2 days later, Harper returned to her apartment in New Orleans to find a package on her doorstep. Inside, a small, plain envelope, a boarding pass, a note. Asterisk, "Your stage is bigger than mine, but I'd rather sit in your front row than at the head of a boardroom. Greater than come back when you're ready. Or don't. I'll still be here. Greater than oh." Asterisk, she read it twice, then again. Then she grabbed her phone and hit call. He answered on the first. Ring. "You gave up the deal?" she asked. "Yeah." "You love that deal. I love you more." Silence. Then she whispered, "That was very un-Wall Street of you. I'm rebranding. I think I'm going to cry again." Then, "I'm booking 2 flights. One for you, one for your waterproof mascara." She laughed. She sobbed. It was a beautiful, chaotic mess, and it was real. A week later, Oliver stood at Louis Armstrong Airport in New Orleans with a bouquet of sunflowers, looking completely out of place. She stepped off the plane wearing a denim jacket, yoga pants, and a look that said, asterisk, "I didn't plan this, but I chose it anyway." Asterisk, he handed her the flowers without a word. She took them, smiled, and said, "Do you have any idea what you're getting into?" "Not a clue," he said, "but I know where I want to be." That evening, Harper's apartment glowed with fairy lights and the scent of roasted garlic. They ate on the floor. She put on a playlist. He didn't roll his eyes once. "You really didn't come to L.A.," she said between lights. He looked at her. "I was scared." "Of what?" "That I'd always show up for the parts of your life that made me comfortable, but not for the ones that made you powerful." She reached across and took his hand. "You just did." Later, as they sat on her tiny couch with a thrifted blanket over their laps, Harper asked the question neither had dared to speak before. "What now?" Oliver leaned back. "Now we build something messier than we planned, and stronger, and real." He said. She nodded. "You're staying a few days?" "I was thinking more like a few weeks." She gave him a look. "You're going to hate it." He smiled. "I'll love it if you're here." Sunday morning broke over New Orleans in a quiet hush of soft clouds and the distant whistle of a streetcar. Harper woke up before Oliver. The sound of his breathing slow and steady beside her. It still felt strange, having him here. Not for a weekend. Not for a grand gesture. Just here. She slid quietly out of bed and tiptoed into the kitchen, wrapping herself in his hoodie, the one that somehow smelled like bergamot and spreadsheets, and started the coffee. By the time he wandered in, hair tousled and eyes sleepy, she was leaning against the counter, sipping from a mug with the words, "A little too much," printed in bold red letters. He nodded toward it. "Fitting," she grinned. "I take that as a compliment." "It is." He kissed her cheek as he passed. Then, almost absently, he opened the cabinet, found the sugar without asking, and stirred it into his cup. She stared. "What?" he asked. "You know where the sugar is." "I've been here a week." "Yeah, but..." You knew, like muscle memory, Oliver turned, cup in hand. Maybe I like the idea of learning your spaces. That made her chest ache in a way no love song ever described. Later. That day, they strolled through the French market, where the scent of spices and pralines lingered in the air like music. Harper pointed out the spots she loved. The mural with the dripping gold crown, the record shop with vintage vinyl, the bookstore where she'd hosted her first talk. He didn't just listen. He memorized Dot at one point. She turned and caught him. Watching her instead of the street musician they'd stopped to hear. What? She asked, smiling. I was thinking about how I used to believe love was about compatibility. And now? Now I think it's about curiosity. You're not what I expected. You're better. Harper looked at him. I was scared you'd try to turn me into someone easier to manage. I don't want easy, he said. I want real. She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for months. That night, they curled up on her couch, rain tapping gently at the windows. The TV was on, but neither of them was really watching. The glow of the screen lit their faces, flickering between laughter and quiet. I talked to my team, Harper said suddenly. He turned toward her. I've decided to split my time officially. I'll keep my apartment here and move into your place in New York part-time. His eyes softened. You sure? I don't want to lose this city. It's my roots, my rhythm, but I don't want to lose you either. He reached for her hand. You don't have to give anything up. We'll build around both, whatever that looks like. She looked down at their fingers interlaced. Most people say you have to pick one life. Then we're not most people. The next morning, Harper was the first one awake again. She tiptoed to the window, coffee in hand, the city stirring slowly below. When Oliver joined her, he wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed a kiss to the back of her shoulder. Should we tell people? He asked quietly. She smiled. That we're in love, or that I'm moving in and taking over your kitchen spices? He chuckled. Both. She leaned back against him. Let's keep it just ours for a little longer. Agreed. They stood. Like that for a while. Quiet, steady, wrapped in a kind of peace neither of them thought they'd ever deserve. A week later, they flew to New York together. Harper wore her sunglasses inside JFK just to annoy him. He pretended not to care. But she saw the corner of his mouth twitch when she trailed behind him, filming a "We're back" vlog for her followers. Oliver hadn't even flinched when she told him she wanted to share their story. Not all of it, not the sacred parts, but enough. People think love always looks perfect, she'd said, but it doesn't. He'd replied, Nope, it looks like a delayed flight and two people trying not to argue in public, and take out on a couch that's too small, and compromise, and honesty, and hope, she finished. They posted a photo later that night, the two of them tangled together on the floor of his living room, surrounded by takeout containers and Harper's open suitcase. The caption simply read, She stayed. That Friday, they hosted a dinner in his apartment for a small group of friends. Noah and Emily included. Harper cooked. Oliver played bartender. Everyone laughed too much. At one point, Noah leaned in and asked Harper, So how's living with the Ice King of Midtown? She glanced at Oliver, then raised her glass. He's melted. The group erupted. Oliver just rolled his eyes. You're never going to let that nickname die, are you? Absolutely not. Later, after everyone had gone, Harper found a small box on her nightstand. Not a ring. A key. With a note tucked beneath it. I don't need a vow or a ceremony. Just mornings with you in 2 cities, and 1,000 imperfect days we figure out together. Move in officially whenever you're ready. Or don't. Either way, this is your home. She clutched it to her chest and whispered, He melted. 6 months. Later, the view from Oliver's penthouse hadn't changed. The skyline still sharp, the city still humming with ambition and noise. But everything inside the apartment felt different. Lived in warmer. There were throw pillows now. An indoor plant neither of them remembered buying. A mismatched coffee mug that read Queen Energy, sitting next to a matte black espresso machine. And Harper. She stood barefoot by the floor-to-ceiling window, one hand wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, the other tugging the sleeves of Oliver's hoodie down over her fingers. The city pulsed below her like a heartbeat. He stepped behind her, quietly, and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You're up early," he murmured. "I wanted to watch the sunrise." He kissed her shoulder. "Good choice." She turned toward him and reached into the front pocket of the hoodie. Then she held up a small silver key, the same one he'd given her months ago. "I'm keeping my apartment in New Orleans," she said. "But I renewed the lease on this place, too." His eyes searched hers. "So you're staying?" She nodded. "Not permanently. Not always. But enough." He didn't say anything at first, just smiled. Then he took the key from her fingers, kissed it, and pressed it back into her palm. "You're the best unexpected roommate I've ever had." She grinned. "And you are still the most organized chaos I've ever dated." He raised a brow. "Organized chaos? I unpacked your closet last week, babe. You have dividers for your socks." "Efficiency is not a crime." She kissed his cheek. "It's cute. In an emotionally repressed kind of way." Later that day, they walked hand in hand through Central Park, bundled in scarves and laughter. Harper narrated every squirrel sighting with dramatic flair, while Oliver rolled his eyes and pretended he wasn't completely enchanted. At one point, she pulled out her phone and started recording a video. "This is my boyfriend," she said, panning to him. "He's a recovering control freak and a secret softie who used to hate weddings, and now sends me flower arrangements with notes like, 'For your messy heart.'" Oliver looked into the camera. "I stand by the flowers." Harper turned it back to herself. "Anyway, moral of the story. Love doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to be tidy or scheduled or symmetrical. Sometimes it's chaos. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's two people choosing each other across cities, across egos, across everything." She paused, lowered the phone, and looked at him. "And that's the love worth keeping." That night, they hosted a dinner again. More friends, more laughter. Her playlist, his wine selection. Their home. Noah pulled Oliver aside during dessert. "She makes you better," he said simply. Oliver nodded. "She makes me real." After everyone left, the apartment went still again. Oliver and Harper sat on the couch, feet tangled, wine glasses half full, a movie playing quietly in the background. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you miss how quiet your life used to be?" He glanced down at her. "No, I miss thinking quiet meant happy." She smiled. "I like that answer." He took her hand. "What about you? I used to think being loud made me hard to love. Now I think it just made it easier to find the ones who are never afraid of the noise." Oliver leaned in. "I was afraid. You just wouldn't let me stay that way." Harper kissed him softly. "You're welcome." In the early hours of morning, when the city was still between breaths, Oliver woke up to find her sitting at the window again, wrapped in his hoodie, knees drawn to her chest. He walked over and sat beside her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes reflecting the glow of the skyline. "I used to think love had to be either freedom or safety. But with you, it's both." He reached for her hand and squeezed it. "It's not always going to be easy." "I know, but it'll always be real." She nodded. "And mine." They didn't get married that year. They didn't buy matching rings or post curated announcements. They built something quieter, stronger, a life that held both of them, all of her too muchness, all of his not enoughness, and let it be enough. Together, they made space. For chaos. For quiet, for coffee mugs and takeout nights, for love that didn't ask either of them to shrink. And in the end, they never needed a ceremony, because some love stories don't start with a question or end with a vow. Some love stories begin with one bed, too many suitcases, a roommate mix-up, and a moment when someone says, "Let's fall, one step at a time," and then does.